Today's guests are Lucy Vail and Chris Brown, both artists and marriage and family therapists, coming today to share the personal details on their journey in their marriage. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 4 of our Big Picture Love Story show. She is your host, Naomi Robertson.
And she is your host, Lucy Loveland. And welcome to our gorgeous guests, Lucy and Chris.
So how did you guys meet? Tell us about that. It's a beautiful relationship, and I just thought it would be nice to show the world.
Okay, let's be honest about this. I had a crush on Chris. I saw him from afar, and I was like, ooh, this guy is always smiling. He's kind of a big, girly guy, which I like because he looks like he gives good hugs, which he does. Really humble. Amazing. And I'm serious. He's looked so humble, and you just said you're too humble, but you were very humble. And I had this friend at the meditation center, and she would always try to get me to go on dates with different people. And I was like, he's okay, but what about that guy? And she's like, I don't know. His name is Chris. I don't know a lot about him. He's really dedicated to his seva, which is like your selfless service or your volunteer position. But what about this guy? You can go out with him. And I was like, And then finally I tracked Chris down. It's hard to tell you that big, long story, but.
Depending on how far you want to go in, but it was interesting because I was actually in a relationship at the time. She kept thinking I was like avoiding her or somehow, but I felt like I really, went to the meditation center, not to necessarily meet someone, but to meditate. But I kept noticing her too. And it's a funny story how we fully got to be kind of introduced because she set up this sort of chant at her house, and she was going to have a bunch of people come over, and I was invited too and do this chant.
Which when I lived in Boston, I would have people over all the time. That's a thing that people would do. A chant is like a sung prayer, and you would have people over, we'd maybe have some food, and then we chant. And most of the time you chant, not all the time, but there's a certain prayer that you sing in the morning, early in the morning. So I thought, I would have to say I was being kind of strategic. I thought I'll invite like 4 people, throw Chris into the mix because I was new to San Diego. I didn't know people that well. And he won't notice and he'll come to my house. So I sent out this email to like 4 people. Get it?
Naomi, I know how to get him in the house.
I know how to get him in the house.
Amazing.
He's so committed to his prayer. So,
brilliant.
So I invited people over and I said, come at 7, blah, 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 blah. Well, in my mind, I thought for sure you would think 7 a.m. because that's the time you usually pray that prayer,
Bless.
So I invited these people, and first of all, like 6:45 in the morning, someone emailed me and said, oh, I can't come. I was working late last night, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. Then the next person was like, oh, I have to go to work early. I'm not going to be able to make it at the last minute. And then here is Chris comes knocking at, 7:02 in the morning in my apartment in San Diego. And I was like, oh, no, everyone else had canceled. And I'm like, oh, God, because in my mind, I know it's a strategy. So I think he's going to know about the strategy. And so I'm like, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. Hi, come on in. Everyone else canceled the last minute. I'm like, oh, he's never going to believe that. And so he stayed and ate breakfast, and we chatted for a long time. And then
that was it.
So then,
chanted.
No, only breakfast.
I'm joking.
People were emailing me saying, "Oh, it's so bad, I missed it. What about we do it tonight at 7?" So I said, "Okay, let's do it tonight at 7." So then I told Chris, I called him and I said, I wasn't, tricking you. It is tonight at 7. And then I'm not kidding you. This is an absolute true story. People canceled out.
Oh my God.
And I didn't.
So you had Chris alone again.
But I didn't think to call Chris because I thought he's not going to come again. He already came at 7. I'm just letting him know, hey, just so you know, everyone thought it was at 7 p.m. That's why they didn't come. So
this is amazing.
And I didn't bother to call him and cancel because I thought there's no. And then at 7 o'clock, my kitchen was the first room in my apartment, and there was this door with glass. And so here at 7 is Chris Brown there, and I'm like, no.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And that's when we had a really good conversation at that time. I mean, both those times, but I think that was like a pivotal time to just really be able to have a serious kind of conversation about whatever, with the premise of sort of a spiritual sort of undercurrent, but who we are as people. And when I was thinking, oh, she could really be someone I could see myself with.
Still
it works.
That's lovely. This is like a rom-com. This is like a love. It is like a film.
Movie gold.
It is movie gold, Lucy.
The thing I loved about him is I kept I didn't love this, but I kept asking like to the movies, and he's like, no, I was gonna, go for a bike ride tonight, like the lamest excuses. And then I was like, do you want to go out to eat? He's like, no, I was thinking of doing the thing. And I'm like, okay, this guy is not interested. Friends, I'm not calling him again. That's it. I mean, how much more can I take? No. And then he called me, and it turns out that he was like, he was getting out of this other relationship, and he was saying, I don't want to start something before I end the last thing. And I thought, very good sign.
That's not. Yeah, that's nice.
Many people do that, so that I thought was a really good sign that he would wait.
Yeah.
Finish this start the next. So then,
well done for being organised, Chris. It always helps. Get your ladies in line. That's brilliant. That's lovely. That's a lovely story. That's absolutely gorgeous.
So you guys have had a beautiful relationship, and I wanted you to share the practices that kind of keep your relationship strong. I know you're beautiful souls, and I've come to you guys and asked questions about things about life, about humans and everything, and it's always nice to get your input. And so I'd love for you to share what keeps your relationship strong.
I mean, the idea that
maybe not
all that hard, but
hard. For me, it's really hard. No, I'm just kidding.
But one of the things that we do like to do for sort of deeper communication is something that is called counsel. And we learned that from my uncle, Jack Zimmerman.
Chris's uncle wrote some books on this. He's a psychologist, and he wrote some books on counsel. It's essentially a way of communicating, sitting down and creating a space for kind of intentional, is it spiritually laced communication or whatever, but we can describe it in specific. But I just want to say that Chris and I met in June, and within the first few weeks, I was kind of like, is this like totally different from anything else you've ever had? I'm going to get choked up because, I was like, and he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, because this is like, I just want to like kind of check in with you really early, because this is like nothing I've ever, been in. Really, I was 41 or something, and Chris is like 36, and he's like, yeah, I feel the same way. So we're like, okay. We think this is going into something long-term really early on. And Chris's uncle has, authored this approach called counsel. And not his uncle, but some other people who teach this were giving a weekend workshop in Ojai, California. And Chris's sister and her husband were going. And he's like, would you like to go to this thing with me? Like a relational weekend. And I was like, God, that sounds great. That a guy this early on is asking me if I want to go to this, but they almost didn't let us do it because we didn't have enough kind of time under our belt together. Right. But then Uncle let us, do it. So we went to this couple's weekend really early on and learned this form of communication. And I know I feel more comfortable talking, so I do more talking. Sorry about that.
That's like me and Alfred.
Although I almost attribute it to earlier, before we got married. Was this before we got married? Or was
yeah.
Okay. Because my uncle married us, and he
wonderful.
We come and do counsel with him, and his time to really kind of create that as a, I guess, something he could see and sort of, I wouldn't say initiate, but the idea of like offer it, especially if he was going to be marrying us. And it's not, I don't know if it's like something we will do all the time, but it is a powerful way that we connect.
Time out. Are we making any sense whatsoever?
Yes.
Oh, no, yeah. I think what would be nice is an example, like a more detailed example of the actual council. So just so people can if they want to practice it, they can take it away. So maybe that would be a nice idea.
Is it like reflective listening? Like where somebody says something?
Well, how do we say it in a nutshell?
The idea of counsel is to acknowledge the third, which is the relationship, and to give it voice.
So there's me, you, and the relationship. There's three.
So the idea is like setting up, whether it's an altar or something, and lighting a candle and having a speaking piece, a talking stick or something like that, and then having a pillow that represents the third in the sort of sitting or
the setup of
yeah.
the conversation, the physical
so
conversation.
you're when we start, we're putting our hand on the third and holding each other's hand and acknowledging that is there, that needs to be acknowledged, and it really sets you in that space of like, oh, this is kind of, we're honoring the relationship.
So Chris early on would say like, okay, you want this, I want this. What does the relationship need? And I was like,
amazing. Yes.
I don't know what you're talking about. Like what do you And so it was like a paradigm shift I had to understand. And what's a classic example? Do we have one of what I want, what you want, what the relationship wants, or?
Well, sometimes it's a little mysterious what the relationship wants, I would say, but the idea of like trust and faith, and I'd say the search and the space held tells more than what I might be able to describe.
Yeah, I know we're not doing a great job of it.
No, but I kind of understand. I mean, it's hard to think of something specific if you don't have it in mind, but I can see that, each person has needs or desires or guilty pleasures. And then you think, okay, but let's look at the relationship, what it needs. So we nurture it and make sure we don't destroy it or kind of trample it with our kind of selfishness. I guess it's kind of also balancing the selfishness and the needs of your partner, but it's a good way to say the relationship so you don't take it personal that somebody's taking something away from you until you kind of invest in it together. Is that kind of?
Yeah.
Well, even the move to going from California to here was a huge, I would say, endeavor. And I would say trusting the third, like, why are we together? What's the teaching that I'm supposed to learn? And how do I listen to that? Even though I want to stay in San Diego, like me, but trusting that the relationship is bringing me here. And what is it trying to show me? What is it trying to open up in me? What is it here that, I entered into this relationship, and why is it bringing me to?
It's beautiful.
Constantly turning towards each other, because it's so easy to turn away from each other. I feel like my natural resting place is single. Like it's way easier for me to be single than it is to be in a relationship. It's way more. I'm just happy. I'm like, and it's so hard to constantly, it's so easy to just turn away in disagreement or when we want different things, and so counsel is a way that when we sit down to intentionally do it, we kind of sink right into a deeper spot where we're turned towards each other and we're honest and open with each other. And it's kind of also, at the risk of sounding it's a bit mysterious, like you're saying, because it is a bit like meditation, that when you hold this practice continually of sitting, these are the two people sitting across from each other. And then sometimes, even though we don't have to sit down for counsel in conflict or something. It doesn't have to be something big to overcome. It could just be like, I'm wanting to connect or something. But when we sit down, we kind of we go into this place that I don't have words to describe. That's a deeper place where we're very connected, right?
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes it's a real intimate space, and sometimes she'll be like, oh, do you want to do counsel? And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's too deep right now. Like I don't know if I can do it. But I mean, and realizing, oh, maybe I need to go there, but it in itself, it can really be powerful.
It seems quite good, because I suppose it's like you say, Lucy, of course it is easier to be single and just look after yourself, because you will do whatever pleases you and you won't whatever doesn't. So, but once you're in a relationship, you're having to think of another person. But I suppose it's what a council does is it stops just two separate people where one has to give up and the other one gets what they want. They're both coming to an agreement for something they both want, sort of thing, if that makes sense, rather than just two individuals wanting opposites. And so that way neither of you feel like you've lost out, I guess, because I know people say relationship, I've all my life I've been told relationship is compromise, and I guess it is, but it doesn't always have to feel like you're always losing or always like not, you're always having to, you know, be bigger or the better person, whatever the word is. This way it's like, yeah, we're both working towards one thing. So that's nice. You don't have to be two just separate individuals.
The idea of also keeping the third in awareness, so that, you know, it's not always just thinking about what do I want too, like, and then the third, and then what does Lucy want? It's like kind of the third kind of starts to permeate more of your kind of pre-thought, and then you're like living in it, I'd say a little bit even more.
The thing
lovely.
Heck out of me about Uncle Jack is that when we the lucky thing is Uncle Jack lives in Hawaii, so when we had to have Jack wanted to, you know, do counsel and stuff with us before we got married, we had to go to Hawaii. Oh well.
Oh, bummer.
No.
Uncle Jack was like, let's really dive into the darkness, the shadow. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. I don't need to.
That's okay then. The bad place.
Oh, good. It's parties and fun stuff right now. And he's like, no, I want to really take some time to really dive into the shadow. So that was causing me a tremendous amount of anxiety. But I guess that's part of it too, even though it's a complex practice that Jack writes books about, and you can read in depth about all the different ways the practice can be enriched or whatever. He also encourages people to look at the shadow or the darker side or dark thoughts or whatever, right?
Well, it's like how to, I don't know, they were kind of hinting that that's also important. But the idea of like looking at the things that might tear you apart too, because they're scary. And so looking at that in those deeper places that the third can also have, you know, something to say about, you know, as far as what does the relationship, there's parts of the relationship that are like, I'm out of here, you know, too. And so it's the way, how do you bring that into, it's a voice and communicate with it, and, you know, argue with it or whatever, you know, like the third.
That's really beautiful, because I do remember a story you shared, because we know that Hawaii weather is pretty beautiful and can have some kind of storms. I don't know if you remember, Chris, you told me once that I think it was the same uncle that the car kind of landed on the tree. That's a beautiful story. Would you be open to sharing that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of the ins and outs of it. They live in Hawaii. It was Jack and his wife, Jacqueline. And I guess they were needing to get to the airport, and it was like this storm that was happening. And so their driveway, there's a little stream that flows over their driveway, and it was enough rain coming down that the water was flowing over their driveway. But they were thinking, well, we could probably drive through that. We gotta go to the airport. We're busy, you know, our life, you know. And so they're like, okay, let's go. And so as they're driving, and they get to that part where they've got to go over the water, there's all of a sudden a huge surge of water that picks up their car and takes it down this ravine. And what the scary part was, when it first landed, I guess it landed passenger side down where Jacqueline was and started filling up with water.
And they're in their 80s. Yes.
And like it was starting to be like, uh-oh, is she gonna not make it because it's filling up? And then another surge, and then the car got lifted up and it got caught on a root just before like a steep drop off that would definitely be certain death. But this root grabbed the car, and it was holding them upright, but they were like stuck there. And then so they were there for 3 hours. Just present to each other and going into council, just like we could be dying at any second. So let's be in this space together in the third and really just be with each other like this. And so, the water did subside and they were able to get rescued. But that was a powerful teaching for them. And they were talking about how it really made them go to a deeper place in life and just realize what's our purpose? Are we just needing to go to the airports, or what are we really needing to connect and do something here? And so they really felt blessed at the same time as it was like kind of scary and tragic.
It's beautiful to hear, to hear that they kind of tapped into their love and light in this moment of need, because you could go into like despair. And I just thought that was a beautiful story that wow, to I don't know if I could do that. I'd be like, I'm about to die.
I'd be do sheer bloody panic. I'd be screaming next to my partner.
Energy.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like merge,
incredible.
Like the idea of spirit and going into the spirit world together and sort of being carried over is another idea in that practice of the third, in the sense of, almost like that's a spiritual practice, like honoring each other. It makes you bigger than you are, and it takes you into these other places that you may not even think of, on your own. But like, wow, part of their practice too was to see how they could possibly go to the other side together with that, that energy. Or so.
Blimey.
Deep stuff. Deep stuff.
That is deep stuff. How were they afterwards? The aftermath, once they knew they were fine.
Well, it was a sort of a paradigm shift for them, they said, because they felt like it's deeper, that the council, like the medicine of that experience was really, it forced them in a way to go to acknowledge a deeper understanding of the third, or of their work, what they're here to do, that they were spared, but also what are they here to do? And it really kind of set them off in a new grounded path of like, this is very powerful medicine for the world.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. So it's such a deep story, and I want to lighten moods up, because you guys, all three of you guys are really funny people that always make me laugh. And so I know that Lucy has a story about, I love the way Chris watches romantic films. Tell us how he watches romantic films.
Well, Chris's favorite kind of rom-com, which is an interesting thing. But anyhow, you have a lot of energy. You were born with a lot of energy, right? Could I say that? Is that correct? I often ask him, like, when you were a boy, were you? And he goes, yeah, I was jumping from couch to couch, driving my mom nuts, breaking my arm, doing daredevil stuff all the time, because he has a tremendous amount of energy in that body of his. And so when I, as well as my family, were shocked when we were watching a romantic comedy and Chris gets too much energy during the rom-com, and he's starts rubbing his fingers like that. And he starts biting on his fist, which sounds so crazy, but because you have so much enjoyment of the love of it,
investment in it. Is it because you're really invested in that particular story? You just love stories, or is it? Is it
before you even answer?
All the above.
Well, it's such a nice connection, you know, because usually rom-coms, there's like they fall apart, then there's a montage, and then when they come back together, it's like,
Yeah.
they are united.
Well, you know, the montage part, like when Harry met Sally or whatever, and then there's a montage going through the city, getting ice cream cones, walking through the park, feeding the pigeons. Chris always has been like, do you think we could have a montage?
You could, eh? You could like have a montage if you want. Probably have to walk a bit slower.
I montage. We never had one yet, but he's like, we should film a montage of ourselves. Like, loves that romantic part in the film where there's the montage. He's like, the montage.
Chris and Lucy first. What are your 3 poignant relationships that have impacted your life or certain parts of it?
You know, I was thinking about any relationship that has allowed me to kind of be outside the norm or the cultural expectations that feel kind of heavy sometimes. Now, specifically, like I was thinking about my friend Sandy, who is my best friend from childhood's mother. And I'm going to take a minute to answer this, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Time. Go for it.
I grew up in an environment where my parents were doing what they thought they were supposed to be doing for the 1990s, and it seemed kind of tragic. Everyone seemed pretty miserable. And I learned a lot about what not to do in relationship and what kind of relationship I didn't want to have. So I was thinking, since it was till I was like mid-30s that I even considered that a relationship could be something I really want to have. So, but when I was a teenager, my friend's mom, when I would go to her house, was so different from anything I had ever seen in my world. And this was a single mom who was in graduate school and working full time. She had a gorgeous boyfriend or boyfriends. She came and go as she pleased, but also was a good mother. And I always looked up to her because I thought, wow, she is not doing anything she's supposed to be doing in the 1970s. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I really appreciate that because I feel like so much of the expectations of how I'm supposed to be in relationships or out of relationships or in the world weighs heavy on me. And so anyone who showed me oh, here's another way to live. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. She gave you an alternative.
I was like, what the hell is this? I went over their house and I'm like, what is this? This woman is like, don't come in my room. My boyfriend's over. She's going to graduate school. She's writing papers. She's, you know, all kinds of things that were free and interesting and engaged and not just fulfilling a cultural expectation of. That's super depressing.
No, it's not. I suppose it's also like, don't forget, in the 60s, it was still rife. Sorry, Chris, but for like women to have a set role, you would get married to a man, and you would have children. Like that was even in the 60s, that was a woman's role. It was very rare for women to like. She's doing a graduate. She was doing universities and stuff like that, and it was especially at her age, and she has a child, but she's not staying with the child's father. That's perfectly normal. That's perfectly okay. But then she was able to do that and not feel the stigma of. I'm sure even in the 60s, the stigma of the community would have been quite intense. So that's amazing. You were exposed to that, and she was. You know, there's such liberal people like that then.
I'm so sorry, Naomi. You were so hitting it right on the head that I couldn't stop interrupting you.
No, please, it's your story, please.
Like my mom was so oppressed by doing, and she would admit this now. I mean, of course, this is no secret, but she was so oppressed doing these things that were prescribed for her that were just crushing her, you know?
Yeah.
The amount of Valium was kind of lifting her out of it, you know? And she's like, it all felt really not true to herself at all. And I'll say this because I've told my friend Sandy this many times. She doesn't mind that I say this, but so it was, you know, the 1970s, and I was in high school and I went to my friend's house. And so her mom, as I'm saying, was blowing me away. Like, what is this whole setup? Like, I want to have this setup. They lived in a converted barn, which she did, and they blah, blah, blah. And so Kelly's mom, Sandy, who now is one of my dearest friends, she had this gorgeous boyfriend that I was talking about that I was like, wow, this is great. They're like, seem pretty free and open and this, that. So she taught me how to meditate too. When I was 16, I would meditate with her like once a year when I would come over. She's like, hey, Lucy, and she was so cool. So the reason I say that is because, I think I've said, but she just helped me understand that, wow, there is 1,001 ways to live a life.
Yes.
And you just have to, it's like, I don't even understand why this exists. And then my family exists. And how do you do this? And so.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's wonderful. It's probably one of my favorites I've heard yet, actually. She sounds like I want to meet her.
She lives, we ended up just living down the street from her after all these years right now. And she's really an inspiration to just living your best life, really. That's
fantastic. Do you have 2 more, or is she your ultimate 3? You're allowed 2 more.
Really, I don't think I have 2 more.
Everybody pales and compares.
I think they do, actually. I'm not gonna lie. She's Sally's done it. She counts as 3 people. Yeah, and she would continue to blow my mind. Like when I was in my early 20s, I would go visit Sandy, even though my best friend, who was her daughter, was off at college, and I would go back to visit. And I would just be like, is it okay if I come over? And she's like, okay, even though, like, you know what I mean? She's the mom of my friend. And then she was like, I'm going to this party tonight. Do you want to come? She's very professional and really was a great mom and good citizen and all these things. I'm not trying to make her out to be some party animal, but she would then bring me these parties in the woods where there'd be like a big bonfire and like a dance troupe. And then there would be people like doing some aerial work at the party. And I'm like, oh my God, Sandy, you know of the best parties. Like, I don't even know that this kind of thing exists. And anyhow, she continued to blow my mind throughout life, including, I guess this will be my 3, Naomi, because that was another aspect of Sandy. And then the third thing that Sandy, please, amazing.
This relationship she taught me, this is so simple, but it changed my life, where people would call her like on a Tuesday, and I'd be visiting her or something, and I'd hear her on the phone, and they're like, hey, Sandy, do you want to do such and such Saturday night? And she would say, well, that sounds like a great idea. It sounds so much fun. I'm not able to really commit at the moment because I don't exactly know how my Saturday's going, but let's touch base on Saturday. And I was like, oh my God, you don't have to commit to crushing commitments on the weekend. Like, you can just say, like, I don't commit ahead of the weekend. And then you get to decide on Saturday, like it's Saturday at 3:00. You want to be like, oh, do I want to go out tonight or not? You don't want to have to be like, oh, I already said I'd go. And so I always tease her about that, because I'm like, you taught me it's okay to say, that sounds great. I don't know. Let's check back in on Saturday. And anybody who doesn't like it can lump it and go, find somebody else.
Yeah. That's really cool. I think that's an amazing. I wish I'd learned that skill. I've only recently been able to say not no, but like, yeah, cool, I'll check that. Like when Lucy asked me to do this, I was like, yeah, cool, give me a week to think about it. And I actually did. But that's an amazing skill. She's like, yeah, sure, I'll just let you know on the Saturday. That's cool. Because she's calm, she's collected, she's confident. I think it's the confidence she's clearly exhumed, she's put out is incredible. I want to be Sandy. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you so much for introducing us to Sandy. I think we're all better for it. Thank you. And Chris, now, please. You can either have one big chock-a-block person or 3 lovely people.
Ooh, so many.
I know.
Well, I think this idea of like formative years is, people who are powerful in formative years. And growing up, I grew up, I have a dyslexia. And in school, I was always had a little bit of trouble, and I was in special ed. And so I would say, I'm trying to narrow it down to a couple of the teachers that really made an impact, but there's this one woman, Angela Wormser, and she kind of was like,
are you going to make me cry right now?
Oh.
But I mean, thinking like how she believed in us, and whereas we're in a system that we were kind of marginalized and not in the main pack, and I think that belief in us as people and could see us as real and that we were valid made a real impact going forward in life in general. Because I even just today think back, oh, she was pretty cool. Like she really made an impact. And even just my friends who were in my class at those times, we all think about her fondly and be like, wow, she believed in us, and and it was helpful, I think, and they impact you in a big way. So I wanted to, give a shout out to her. So,
lovely little tribute there. Yeah, nice.
But then on another relationship, as growing up, my dad was into spirituality, and a lot of in the 70s, there was a lot of gurus coming over from India, and one of my dad's teachers, I would say, was someone named Sham Bhatnagar, he came over from India too, but his big thing was about how to remain free, even though like some of these gurus may have certain powers. He had sort of a science behind it that could teach you that it's almost like bigger than that. And so like his thing was like, well, you might be at a certain level, but there's more to it. So it's always like a little bit more freeing than like, well, this person has the answer. It would be a way of unlocking it so that you're not sort of stuck there. It's like, well, there's more. And it's like, what? And then there's more. And then it's bigger.
Oh, yeah.
You can be free. You don't have to just be, locked into that. And so that doesn't mean you're not following something or practicing a certain practice, but you're not just locked into it. And so he opened my mind up in how to be in the presence of great beings, but also to feel empowered in my own experience and my own, connection to spirituality and stuff like that. Finally, I appreciate this when I was in grad school for getting my master's in social work. I don't know if I wouldn't say befriended, or because I had just gotten my master's in ceramics, and I was like, well, I don't know if this is going to pay the bills. So I went to get a master's in social work, and there was a ceramic department there. And that's my first love anyway, art. And so I went and was like trying to see what could happen in the ceramic department. And there was this retiring ceramic professor who I got into his good graces, I would say. And he allowed me to teach class. And that was like my first teaching position that someone like respected me enough to offer that to me. And so I always go back to appreciating him, because that really set me in that direction. Like, oh, I taught at a college level, and then now I can say I did that. First, it was like that initiation into that, because it's like, if you didn't do it, how do you say you have the skills to do that? And so he opened that. And so I remember I think he tested me, because I was there just saying, oh, can I just make some stuff in the art department? I wasn't trying to do anything other than just make some stuff. And then they had all this like excess clay there. And I had asked him, I was like, hey, can I use that recycled clay? I want to make something. And then so over the weekend, I made this huge sculpture. And he came in Monday. What is this? And he's like, what are you doing? And so in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I had asked you Friday, and you said that I could use it. But I was also thinking like, well, I don't want to like seem like I'm taking advantage. But he said to me, he's like, oh, you're taking advantage of this program. And I was thinking, like I was just saying, was like, I thought he just said I could do this. But I said, you're right. I am taking advantage. Like I am. And then he's like, okay, then. All right, then you don't have to I think if I had copped an attitude, he would have an excuse to like get rid of me. But since I like was humbled, I said, yes, you're right. He like welcomed me in. And it was like, I don't even know if he thought that, but I felt like that was like the test.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, you're all right.
Oh, these are really nice. All your relationships, you've learned something, or you've gained something from them. It's really lovely as you've grown.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have each other to kind of.
Oh, yeah,
Grow
exactly.
with each other. I was going to say
so
that.
cool.
Do you guys read any, do you have any books that you recommend for people? Because there's a lot of insightful things that you both have said, like just right now about knowing that was a test with your professor, and knowing to, it doesn't come natural to some people, or they don't even realize it's a test, right? Or how do we grow as a human being? Because I think that your relationship works, that third, because you both work on yourselves so much, because you both want to be better people, and you both want to, I just see that in you, and I see that love and compassion that you have for everyone. I just have always loved talking to you guys, because I can see that, if I start to feel like, the world feels a little harsh right now, it's nice to tap into you guys, and you have this kind of wonderful, explanation of the world and the way to go about it. And it just seems so peaceful and so reassuring. So I guess, since you haven't written a book, and I'd like to urge you to, that's like the therapist in you that you both are. And do you recommend any books for people to tap into this brilliance?
Well, I mean,
What?
What's so funny? Flesh and Spirit, although there's the.
Oh, I don't know what he's talking about. It's par for the course, actually.
Well,
I mostly don't know what the hell he's talking about.
My uncle Jack wrote a book called Flesh and Spirit, which talks about his experience with the third, and that whole Jack Zimmerman, Flesh and Spirit is that book. I guess there's a lot of different teachings from a lot of different wise people, and I would say, I almost can't really put my finger on any particular person, but I guess the popular ones right now with Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, is a kind of way of being present. And so,
I haven't read that, but I'd like to. I've heard about it. And in terms of therapy stuff, I mean, not like in terms of therapy stuff, but I feel like so much personally I benefit from. I love reading stuff about gender fluidity and it seems like, well, what does that have to do with heterosexual folks who are Caucasians living in Connecticut or whatever? But, to me, the essence of Sandy is the essence of learning that, about a spectrum of sexuality, a spectrum of gender, those kind of I guess considered somewhat postmodern ideas of looking outside the box and beyond things are the norms are always so comforting to me. And I know that's a whole lot of stuff, but I'm just thinking about all those things that the first time I heard someone explain to me that gender is a spectrum and there's a million and one whoever, and I was like, I love that stuff. That allows me to be the weirdo that I am,
Well, it's like always educating yourself on all sorts of things, because then that way you're more open to new things, and it makes you more of a rounded person. I find if you just shut yourself in a box of, like you say, for example, the genders, girls and boys, that's it. Well, that's not the world. Not now, anyway. I mean, it never used to be the world, but it used to be the world's thinking. But now we're becoming, especially the Western society is definitely becoming more, just allowing more information and people to speak up more. So that's good. I think that's very good to always educate yourself on what you're not usually always exposed to.
And I forgot to mention the most important thing of all, I think, which is going to get me kind of choked up, because the thing that blew, this just kind of like hit me with what you're saying, Naomi. And then I was like, God, the thing that really blew my mind about Chris Brown is that he's the most non-judgmental human I've ever connected with.
Wonderful.
I don't even know that kind of non-judgment exists. I not like that. I'm unfortunately, Chris lives with a judgmental person. I try to be less judgmental, but when I first met him, I would always be expecting him to judge me in so many different ways, and time again. Because when we were saying thinking outside the box or whatever, like when I would first talk to Chris, just in generally be about thinking outside the box, and Chris would say, everyone in the world around me is always talking about how to get outside the box, how to think outside the box, how to live outside the box. He goes, I've been trying to get inside the box my whole life. Like, I was born outside the box. And
That's so funny.
Yeah. Experience of inside the box. And I was like, and part of that is that something about the way he's grown up and the whole makeup of him, and I guess that could be another 6-hour conversation, is that he's just absolutely positively non-judgmental of people. And I feel like I get to like swim in that non-judgment every day with him. It's like,
oh.
And I say that to him once a week or more frequently. Thank you so much, my beloved, for not judging me every single day. I wake up and I get to be in a space of non-judgment, which I had never experienced before. So I forgot in my anxiety or nervousness or excitement to mention the most important thing, which is I get to live in this non-judgment, or what I call, I get to wallow in this pool of non-judgment and
reserve the right to be a little judgmental here and there.
You save it up for when you need it.
Yeah, just a little bottle just to throw.
But Lucy, you're such a delight too. Let's not forget
You
about
are.
you. You are such a delight to be around, and you're so funny and you lighten the mood. I mean, we always like quote you, like, because the story about why you didn't change your last name to his last name.
To be Lucy Brown. Like, people are like, are you not going to change your name? I'm like, well, first of all, I was 41 when I met Chris. So I feel like I've been Lucy Vail for a long time. And then when people are like, oh, Lucy Brown, and then the rest of my life, 40 to however I live, I have to explain to people, well, actually, the Charlie Brown Lucy is not named Lucy Brown. She's not Charlie's sister. She's Langs' sister. And then I have to have that conversation
Every time.
1,000 times every year when people are like, oh, Lucy Brown. I'd be like, well, actually, Lucy's name in the Charles Schultz thing is not Brown. But then like a year after we got married, Chris was like, yeah, I guess there was a little part of me that always hoped you would have taken my name. And I'm like, what? Oh my God, if I knew you wanted me to
Telling me now.
I would have taken your name. Who cares? I'll be Lucy Brown. He's like, well, I said, why didn't you say something? Anyhow.
Aww.
Loveland, you're always so nice to me. I feel like I'd love to call you every day and get your positive reinforcement from me. When I ask Chris Brown, like, why do you like being married to me? Why do you like being married to me? He always says, you're so professional. And I'm like, what? That's like a vacuum cleaner for Valentine's Day. I'm so
It's a bit, isn't it?
He says it all the time. I'm like, what does that even mean? He's like, well, you really helped me up my game. You're so professional. I'm like, oh my God.
I do get the compliment. I get it. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, I do get it, Chris. But it's probably not the most sensual thing she was asking for, you know.
If you knew me, you'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
I'm like, and that you're just being kind of guyish about this and you can't think of it right now. And then I'm not like, when I say, why do you like being married to me? I do, which I say 10 times a day. And he's like, because you're, hold on, let me think about it. Because he knows that if he almost says, because you're professional, because you're,
Pretty.
don't you dare say, because I'm
pretty.
What's the big picture of your message? What do you think is the most important takeaway that you would like people to grasp from your message today?
I think the big message for me is just because you marry a guy twice your weight, don't eat the same size portions as him.
That is absolutely hysterical. Was not expecting that. That is amazing.
That is what I've been doing the last few years. It's not working out well for me and my
Fantastic.
delightful wardrobe that I love that I can no longer wear. So anyhow, no, just kidding.
I love that. Please keep that in. That's amazing.
I will.
Thank you.
I grew up with a fair-sized family where there was enough, but just enough, so
Okay.
competitive eating. Like my mom would put a big pot of something on the kitchen table, and then all the kids sit around, and there was a lot of like, how much is left, how much can we get? So I realized this when I met Chris, and I like really up my ante. When he's like making a pile like this, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna eat this. Oh, leave me into it. And I thought, God, and he's like, I'm twice your weight. So I mean, it seems like you don't need to eat twice like the same amount as me, because I'm like, oh my God. Anyhow, it's a message.
Well, I think respecting each other is a powerful thing,
What do you mean by that, Chris?
Well,
Mr. Brown.
respecting your space, who you are, what you need. There's a lot of subtleties to, I think we appreciate putting ourselves in situations that don't tax the relationship too. Because there is a fragility. Any relationship could be put in a situation that would really, I think that in that respect, respecting that, we appreciate that about each other too.
That's super important.
That is
I
great.
think it kind of goes overlooked. I think that, our relationship can, be tested over and over again and be put in more difficult situations, and I think that because it's easy to be polarized, right? It's easy to get. So I think that's such a good point to make, that you think that it's just supposed to work, right? Love is just supposed to work, and if it's meant to be, then it'll work. If it's challenging, that means you don't protect it. That means it wasn't meant to be. That kind of mentality, I don't think helps, and I really appreciate that you guys are honest about it. I don't feel like it helps anybody if people come off and say it's easy, it's perfect, it doesn't take any work, or there shouldn't be any disagreements. Like, I've heard those kind of messages, and so when I was early in my marriage, I felt like I was judging myself, like I shouldn't be this way, there's something wrong with me or something. But then you realize, oh no, you have your own voice, you love your partner, and you want to be together, and you want to work this out. You don't really want to strain it more. That's not your intention, and you want to grow as a person. So I really appreciate that you've said that, and coming from a guy, honestly, because it's
Oh.
It's a conversation more than a statement, I would say.
Yeah. I was going to say thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
It was so nice having you guys, and and I hope you come back on the show.
Naomi, I'm moving to England, and I hope Chris is coming with me, but we'll see.
Yes, absolutely. Please come to England. I will show you around.
Land's End. We're moving to Land's End.
Really?
Oh, you're at Land's End. Oh, wow.
I don't know what that is, but I will definitely look into it.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there. Thanks for tuning in to our episode. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a big thumbs up, and we'll keep making that juicy content for you. Go on, subscribe. Go on, do it. Like to. Go on, subscribe. I'll turn away. Have you done it? Go on then.